So hello everybody. Today I'm going to talk to you again about Lorcana. Yes, I have been producing a lot of content over the course of 2 days for Lorcana. The reason is that I'm really enjoying this. I'm also really getting into buying the stuff. So I went to my local bookstore because I wanted to collect 2 books and I couldn't walk past the booster packs or the displays without drawing 3. I'm also waiting for a couple of booster displays actually in the post. Hopefully I will be getting 3 tomorrow. And yeah, I'm really enjoying this. I mean, it's it's a nice pastime, I guess, and it kind of caters to my completionist personality. But I've also, started to, whenever I find a topic that's really of interest to me, I dive really deeply into it. I have this monofocus. So I really opened a bag, and it was a bag of holding, and I fell into it, and lo and behold, there was Lorcana. So for the last couple of days, I have been investing quite a lot of research time into Lorcana. I have also discovered and really read up on how tournaments work, how sealed boosters and draft boosters in tournaments work. And I have recruited someone to actually play a sealed booster session with me. So basically we're going to get 6 boosters each. This is how it works for Lorcana. And then we unbox them or draw from them. Everybody so gets 72 cards, and you have to construct a deck within 30 minutes of opening them of at least 40 cards, and there is no limit as to the number of inks that you can use or the number of cards per each individual card that you can put into your deck. So it can only ever be max 2 and no more than 4 of each individual card. That doesn't apply to these booster based tournaments. So we're going to do this, and it was actually suggested that we might want to look into actually YouTubing it. So we'll see if we can do it and how we will do it, but that's just one thing. However, sometimes, serendipity strikes. And I started getting into Lorcana last weekend, and this week on the, I want to say 20th, there was the first issue of the so-called Lorecast, which apparently is a new format that Disney Ravensburger is now going to introduce. And they've got their Twitch channel now. And on this Twitch channel, they, in this Lorecast, for about 3 hours, they announced the 4th chapter, which is called Ursula's Return, Ursula's Rückkehr in German, which is the 4th wave. So we've had the 1st chapter, Floodborn, Inklands, and now it's Ursula's Return, and it's coming out, I want to say, in May. And there were a couple of things that I was talking about in my first Lorcana video. Number one, the fact that it's very simple to get started with it, because you're also addressing a younger audience. This is for children. But also you want to enter the TCG market, so you have to make it competitive and interesting for competitive players, but also interesting for people who are mainly there to collect. Now, I don't know anything about the collectors area. I also don't care about it. I do know that with one of the bigger ones, there was a big scandal a couple of years ago when the creator of this particular TCG went back on a promise that they had made several years previously, that there was a set of cards which was never, ever, ever, ever going to be reprinted. So lots of people back in the old days bought those cards, hoping, and apparently I was very surprised that any sane person would actually do this, believed that they could hold on to these cards and use them later on in their lives and sell them off for lots of money to supplement their pension. I'm like, okay, that's completely out there. But apparently this producer went back on their promise and started to reprint those cards. And of course, everybody's old cards values plummeted, and it was a big scandal. So that taught me one thing, which I had already known, but it kind of reinforced my stereotype. Don't put your stock in cardstock. But there were other things that I have been looking into, and that's mainly mechanics, but also a really deep understanding of the rules. And I've already seen that there are some rules that I have misunderstood, that I do want to get right the next time we play, because of course I do want to follow the rules, because the rules are there for a reason, to make sure that there is a challenge. It's not too much of a challenge, it's not insurmountable, but it does work. But one thing we did notice the first time we played was the second round, I just ran away. And it wasn't because I had planned to do it, but because the chance deck that I had created presented itself to me as I was drawing the cards in such a way that I was able to put out lots and lots and lots of questers at very short intervals, and I ran away. And it became quite obvious quite early on in the game that I was going to win. You know, there was nothing my opponent could do. And interestingly enough, I watched this YouTube video where 3 really experienced players were debating this and saying, at the moment, it's really like you can play on your own against an opponent without actually engaging with them, without actually challenging them. All you need is a lot of lore, characters that you can play really, really quickly, work on card draw, work on inking. And there are cards, because now I have over 220 cards and I've looked at all of them. There are plenty of cards that actually allow you to draw cards more quickly, and also cards that allow you to turn cards into ink out of turn. So usually within the sequence, you can only do this once on your turn, but they allow you to do this twice, or even, you know, I believe that there is one character, and if it is banned, it doesn't go onto your discard pile, but you can actually ink it there and then. So you have one additional ink there. So that's one you might not want to attack on your opponent's side, because they will get an additional ink. So, and they said, and there was this one guy, and he said, well, you know, sometimes I really feel like you can sit there and basically your opponent, we're talking tournaments now, sits like 5 meters away from you, and they just shout their points to each other, the legends, because they're like, you know, I don't even need to know what he's doing. I'm just collecting all of my legends. He's collecting his legends, and the person who collects the 20th legend most quickly wins. You don't really need to see what's happening there. And that kind of reminded me a lot of chess. Because in modern chess, and if you've ever watched professional tournaments, especially world championships, you have all of these people who are sitting around, the experts, and they will tell you, you know, so they watch what white does, and then how black counters, and then they know exactly what kind of an opening is being played, and they can usually predict with almost 99% accuracy what is going to happen and when. And the reason is that chess has been played for such a long time, and professional chess has been played for such a long time, that there are libraries upon libraries upon libraries of openings, mid-game and end-game strategies. Now, the opening is arguably the thing that is most easy to track, you know, because then as you proceed, things might happen. And in professional chess, this happens very rarely. But sometimes there may be a lapse in concentration, and somebody makes a mistake, and then suddenly the field is blown wide open, much to the person who has made the mistakes anger and surprise, but also sometimes to the detriment of the person, of their opponent, because they're like, oh my God, they didn't do what I expected to do. Now I've got a completely new situation on the board. How do I work with this now? So sometimes the fact that your opponent makes a mistake isn't necessarily a good thing for you, which is why the great Bobby Fischer introduced Fischer's chess, where you have exactly the same chess pieces and chess men that you have in a normal set of chess, and they do the same things, but the way you place them on the board on the 2 bottom rows on each side is random. So you always get a different setup. So it's not king next to queen, or, you know, like, and always in the middle, but there could be a rook there instead. And you really have to start from the very beginning. And of course, that's what you get when you play tournaments using the draw method, because you don't know what you're going to draw. And then it's really down to your understanding of the rules. And hence, I'm so interested in really understanding the rules. And they are intricate. They're not as terrible as some rules that I've read in my life, but they are not simplistic. They are simple. You can learn them very quickly, but there are things that you have to bear in mind, and there are things that we've done wrong. So anyway, that's when you really show your understanding of the game mechanics, but also the understanding of how the cards work and how cards can interact with each other. And for those of you who have ever played the Lord of the Rings LCG, the further you go into the cards, the more cards you buy, the more you will see that the interaction between cards is becoming more and more important because the card pool grows. And we see the same here. Now, these guys were then debating, you can, as I've said, basically do your own thing and completely ignore what your opponent is doing. And this is happening more and more frequently. So they were hoping for a mechanic that we had already basically been discussing and saying, this is odd that this isn't even part and parcel of the story, namely being able to counteract your opponent's moves on their turn, like a reaction. And so they were speculating that this was going to be introduced with the 4th set, which is coming out now in May. Now we have the 4th set revealed. It doesn't look like this additional mechanic will be part and parcel of this set. It wasn't mentioned at all. But they did reveal 2 things which I think are very interesting, and one of them was completely unexpected for me, and I believe for everybody else as well, because when I was looking now at people's videos, they were like, well, I have no idea how this would actually work. For somebody like me, I was like, oh, I can completely imagine how this is going to work, the mechanic that they're going to introduce. It's not just a mechanic, it's actually a different way of playing. But I was like, okay, well, I'm used to this. I know exactly what this is. So what did they introduce? Number 1, they introduced a beginner set, which is a lovely box, and it comes with even like a board on which you can play. And each person who plays, and it's a 2-player game, gets a set of 30 cards. Now that's your starter deck. And as you play, you get boosters, and that also come in the box that you can then take and open. So as you progress, you get more and more cards. Now this is, of course, a super ideal gateway. First of all, you only have to master 30 cards, and they are not random, I assume. So they will probably have put them together that the 2 sets are almost equally matched, if that's even possible, but also to introduce some ideas of, like card combos, etc. But then you add more and more stuff, so that I believe by the end, each player will have a 60 card viable deck. And that really reminded me of the Harry Potter deck builder, which came out several years ago, which is also for ages 8 and up, which operates on the same level. So basically you start with only a couple of possible cards in the pool, and as you progress and as you win, you open successively more boxes. So it's a little bit like a legacy game, and then you get additional mechanics, you get additional cards to be able to grow with the game. And it makes perfect sense. And I think the Harry Potter deck builder was definitely a gateway for lots of people who basically then moved on to the more dry and maybe more mechanically challenging deck builders like Dominion, etc., where you don't have this additional storytelling narrative element, but it's really a plain deck builder, bam, in your face. But the other thing that they introduced took me by surprise, and it took everybody else by surprise. They have introduced something that in German is called Die Illuminari-Chroniken. So it's all about a great quest. And I'm going to show the artwork. So this is basically from the website, and you can go there and you can watch it, and you can see there's also a trailer that introduces the fourth set, which is called Ursula's Return. And this is a completely different way of playing, because this is the first Illuminari a Lorcana installment that plays like the Lord of the Rings LCG, for example, or the Arkham Horror LCG, for example, or Buffy Legendary Encounters by Upper Deck. You know, those kinds of games. Although those two, I'll take back the Buffy one, because that's a deck builder. It's more like a living card game, because here you have two sets, two viable 60 card decks, because it starts out with 2 players. You can add 2 more, but they have to bring their own decks. But out of the box, you can use it for 1 or 2 players. So each one has their own deck. And then the golden deck that you can see here in the back is actually the story deck. So basically, the way these games work is you draw challenges, as they are called. It could be an antagonist, it could be an enemy, it could be a location, it could be an event, depending on what you're playing. So in Lord of the Rings LCG, it's either an enemy, or it can be a place that you need to travel and explore, or it could be an event, you know, things like that. And you have to face them using your own cards. And usually there is also a staging area in at least the Lord of the Rings one, where all of the monsters that you haven't taken out stand, and you can keep trying to kill them. Apparently there are 2 fighting arenas where you can encounter Ursula, one that is less difficult and one that is more difficult, and because they say that it's got different challenge levels, as it were, which I really like. But it's going to be a completely different way of playing for any TCG player, because this will be cooperative play. And I am excited about this, because I've always loved cooperative card games. And I was actually talking at the weekend about resuming Lord of the Rings with the person that I'm playing Lorcana with, because I've got so many cards, you know, and now they've also turned it into this that you can only get the hero cards. So I was like, you know, we should really look into this. I would really like to show this to you, because it is an awesome game, and the artwork is stunning, and the storytelling, as the, you know, not all of the game mechanics always work, and not all of the stories were always good, but a lot of the stories are brilliant, and it's just very atmospheric. But now we can try this out to see, does it suit the play style of both players? I know it suits mine, staying within the Lorcana verse. And so for me, this is an insta buy, and I'm going to pre-order this because it's going to be Lorcana. So it's going to be the Disney vibe. It's going to be familiar in some areas, but it's also going to be different because it's going to introduce those mechanics. Now, they didn't really talk about the mechanics, but since I'm so familiar with cooperative LCGs, I have a pretty good idea of what we will be seeing because they have been tried and tested. They have been around for a good while. Of course, Fantasy Flight Games butchered many of them, and there are so many things where you kind of go, oh yeah, we had to nerf them, we had to house rule them because what FFG came up with just didn't work. But the Lorcana guys have had so much time to analyze these ones like Arkham Horror and Lord of the Rings and see what works and what doesn't work. And I'm pretty sure that they're going to avoid the things that don't work and are going to concentrate and enhance the ones that do work. And so I'm really excited about this. So this was just my 2 cents. I'm really excited about Lorcana. I will not open these today because I am going to open them on camera, but I just don't feel like doing it tonight because I'm a bit tired. But yeah, watch this space. Talk to you soon. Bye.